What's going on? You had about 7 minutes of these two guys on your screen earlier today. Maybe some of you were like, that wasn't enough. So we ran it back, as the kids say. Welcome on into the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. I'm Aslan Hajivandi, joined by managing editor of Warchant.com, the ultimate Seminoles sports source, Ira Schoffel. Join us, everybody. It's only $1 right now for an entire month, or you get 25% off an annual subscription to Warchant.com. The deal ends Wednesday. And I don't know if we're double dipping here, Ira, but I think we've even sweetened the pot a little bit to where if you join the Battle's End, you get free access to warchant.com for the rest of 2023. So pick your poison, however you want to support Warchant and your favorite football team. But we've got this running over at warchant.com until Wednesday, 25% off the annual subscription, $1 for a month. I'm not a certified public sort of accountant or a financial specialist, but one or the other will do the trick, right, Ira?
Yeah, and it's basically two separate promotions going on at the same time. The one is if you sign up to support the Battle's End, which is doing all kinds of good things for Florida State on the NIL front, you will get a information. They'll send you information to your email with how to get access to warchant.com through the rest of the year. The other deal is you buy the year subscription directly through us. Don't deal with Battle's End. Maybe you already have your Battle's End account. The Battle's End deal is only for new members of Battle's End. If you want to start a new subscription with us, you take advantage of those deals, which you can find at warchant.com. And it's a great time, man. What are we, 4 days into preseason camp? I feel a lot better than I did when we talked last time, Aslan. I was sweaty, musty. It was nice to get a shower, comb my hair. I feel a little bit better than I did 7 hours ago after camp.
Yeah, it feels almost as good as having the protection of State Farm agent Russ Voorhis with you. Folks, if you don't know, Russ, huge Florida State fan, alum, endowed scholarships that he's helped bring to the university. He's got 2 offices you see on your screen there, Jacksonville Beach, which Corey and I will be hanging out at in a few days, hopefully, as we cover the Noles at UNF, but also Orange Park. And if you're joining us from maybe Alabama or Georgia, he's got your back too. So full coverage in the state of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. State Farm agent Russ Voorhis. You can check him out at russvoorhis.com, Ira.
Yeah, Russ is a good guy. You'll probably see him over there, and he'll probably try to drag you out for a beverage or two as well. Good guy, and and like basically one-stop shopping for your insurance needs, and he helps people out throughout the Southeast, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. Very knowledgeable, been in the insurance business for a long time, and it's trying times, man, in the insurance game right now, but I think he'll take care of you.
Absolutely. All right, well, first things first here on the Monday Smash. Kurt Searcy asks, what is Ira drinking tonight?
You know what? It's camp. We got to be focused right now. I'm just going with a little soda pop. Okay. I'm man, we're these are it's funny, like you kind of get out of practice, but I think a week or two in we'll be in a rhythm. But those first 4 days, I mean, it was funny today at the end of practice to let people know Jarian Jones, who likes to play with the media on occasion. He's not one to be shy about talking to the media. When he was walking off the practice field today, he looked over at us all huddled in the shade, and he's like, "Hey guys, I just want you to be safe. Make sure you're hydrating. Make sure you guys are getting your sleep. We don't want any of you guys to fall out." And anyway, so yeah, man, I'm taking it easy tonight. Maybe while you guys are in Jacksonville, if I'm not over there, I'll take some adult beverages at that point.
Oh, all right. We saw practice on Monday. We'll share observations as you ask us, but this is a question that's popped up here early, and we saw it come down mid-afternoon after we'd totally wrapped up everything we'd done over at Doak Campbell Stadium, Ira, and that was a report that came from Pete Thamel of ESPN that apparently in the next 24 hours, there will be a series of conference calls amongst ACC decision-makers, athletic directors on one call, then later on presidents and chancellors about exploratory talks regarding adding Cal and Stanford. Your reaction when you saw that story come across your social media, Twitter X feed?
Yeah, there's been talk about the ACC looking to bring in some of those West Coast teams for a while now, even before the Pac-12 disintegrated. So it's not surprising that would be discussed. Reading Pete Thamel's story, it sounds like it's very preliminary. And it also seems like it's very not going to be very lucrative. I mean, as anyone would imagine, adding Stanford and Cal to the inventory currently existing with the ACC is not going to change the deal. It's not going to shake up the TV contract where now ESPN just starts throwing cash at the ACC. So I don't think it affects a whole lot as far as Florida State goes. I think if you're an ACC school that wants the ACC to survive, and if you're Jim Phillips and the power structure in the ACC, you're looking at all possible options to make your conference as strong as possible. I don't know what are you going to do with two teams out west? It just seems like a very strange idea, and I don't think it changes a whole lot for Florida State. But I understand the ACC is trying to figure out if there's anything they can do. Maybe you piece them together with a few other teams out west and start a West Coast division. But I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I think they're grasping at straws.
Glass half full or complete naivete on my part to think that maybe the ACC, Jim Phillips, these chancellors, these ADs feel that Florida State's not bluffing, that it might be only a matter of time before they announce an exit from the conference, and maybe they take a team with them or a team decides to join, so they're not filling the void of Florida State and, let's say, Clemson, because you can't when it comes to negotiating a television contract, because you're not going to get nearly the value out of those two teams as you would Florida State and Clemson. But maybe it's simply trying to stand pat if they foresee losing two teams here in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it's that specific, but I think, again, that's kind of what I was saying is, like, I feel like if you're the ACC, if you can figure out a way to strengthen your base as much as possible, you're going to want to try to do that. If there's a way to, there was talk in the past, and Jim Phillips has been talking now for over a year that expansion is something they're still looking at because they do feel like they need to be as strong as possible. But again, it's kind of interesting. There's not that many great schools on the market, and so who are you going to add? Who else are you going to add? So if Florida State and Clemson were to leave, like you said, that's not going to replace them, but who could replace them? I mean, it's just we're kind of at the point now where most of the big chips have been played.
Incredible, man. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay tuned. We're far from over on that front. That's why you got to subscribe to warchant.com to know what's going on with all this possible realignment stuff coming out here. I don't know if we had like a 5-yard penalty, false start on our guy, Daryl Jackson, which as long as he wants to do it on social media and not on the field, that'd be cool, provided he is eligible. But he did tweet out like an encouraging kind of X or whatever, talking about, maybe having some good fortune on his side. But do we know whether or not that portended to him getting a waiver from the NCAA to be eligible this season, Ira?
Not that we can tell. I'm talking to some people at FSU. There's basically nothing to add. Whatever he tweeted. But you would think if Florida State also got news that he was cleared and he was able to play this season, they would be very happy to put that out and announce it and or confirm it when we called. And when we called, they said they don't have anything to add about the tweet. So I don't think it was regarding that. Maybe something else went well for him. Maybe he won a scratch off lottery ticket. Maybe something else went well for him in his life, but I don't think it was that the waiver got cleared.
Thanks to the man above, he said in his social media tweet there, or X, whatever, post. It's called posts, right? Because they're not called retweets anymore; they're called reposts. So it's a post.
And for people that aren't reading the daily practice reports and observations, some people just watch these shows. They're not on the site. They're not on the boards. Daryl Jackson is practicing every day. He looks good. He looks just as good as he ever has. So if he is cleared, he's going to be fine. It's not a situation where if he's cleared, then he has to start through practice. I mean, he's there every day. He's practicing. Looks great. If it happens, it happens. The fact that it hasn't happened yet has a lot of people concerned, but we don't have a definitive word yet.
Yeah, no acclimation period for him whenever he gets that waiver because he'll be ready to go, as Ira mentioned. Kurt Searcy also asking, I wonder why Clemson has been so silent through all of this. Now, Graham Neff is the guy that Corey said on Wake Up Warchant is the one you need to listen to, but a county of Sweeney was heard from today. I don't know if you saw these comments from him, but I saw the thread over on the warchant.com tribal council that, the headline from this story from our Clemson On 3 sister site on the On 3 network said something about, Sweeney says Clemson will be awesome despite ACC television deal. He says, from my perspective, my job is to take what we've got and go beat what they've got. And honestly, in my 15 years, there's always been a gap. Later, he talks about all these years when we played LSU in 2012. Guess what? We didn't have the same TV contract. We definitely didn't have the same athletic budget. We didn't have the same amount of 5 stars or 4 stars, but you've still got to play the game, right? And I don't know where you stand on this, but part of me is like, yeah, is this just going to come down to who's got the best well-heeled boosters that can keep this thing running on each end? Part of me, but maybe that's, again, me being a little bit naive. What are your thoughts on Dabo's comments?
Well, I think Dabo might need some help with the math because, yes, there's always been a revenue gap. And this is, look, man, 10 years ago, like he's talking about in 2012, 2013, Gene Williams was beating the drum, our boss, that Florida State had to get out of the ACC. It was a disaster. I was one of the people saying, look, man, that gap it's a problem, $5 to $8 million, maybe even $10 million. It's a problem, but I don't think it's worth going to the Big 12 over. I don't think it's that big of a problem. I think you can make up that difference. This is a totally different thing. We're not talking about 2012, Dabo. We're talking about 2025, 2028, 2030, 2034. I mean, you're talking about 13 more years of this gap is not just a gap anymore. It's a canyon, $30 to $40 million a year. Every 12 months, like the word year, I think kind of like people gloss over. Every 12 months, every time you have a birthday, University of Florida is going to get $30 or $40 million more than Florida State gets. You're not overcoming that with coaching, Dabo. You're not. It's just, and so to me, that argument doesn't make any sense. What you've done in the past doesn't apply to what's going to happen in the future. As far as why Clemson's been silent, and you mentioned Graham Neff. Graham Neff used to work with Dan Radakovich when Dan Radakovich was at Clemson. I think, and Dan Radakovich is now Miami's athletic director. I think they're pretty well connected. I think Florida State's been talking to them. I think North Carolina, despite what Bobby Cunningham has said, their AD, I think they've all been talking. We know they've been talking for months. So why different people handle things differently, I don't know. Part of it's orchestrated, part of it's not orchestrated. The one thing I'll tell you is none of it means anything. Like nothing that anybody says publicly in any of this stuff. How many times have we seen it? The Pac-12 had a meeting to sign a contract and then didn't sign it, and they all left. So what anybody is saying publicly right now just doesn't really matter. We'll see what happens. We know where Florida State stands. We know, that this contract is not getting any better. Florida State's made it clear if it can't get any better, they have to figure out a new direction. And now we'll see what comes of that. But, other schools posturing publicly, I just don't think it matters because nothing any of these people say matters until they actually take actions.
Shout out to James B. Yeah, Corey and I did not know. Somebody was like, what do you guys think about Neff? And I'm like, what's Neff? Is that a thing? Is it like a new thing? And surely enough, it's the athletic director of Clemson. So
you haven't seen my guy, have you?
No.
He looks like he's about, I'm not an ageist, but he looks like he's about 25. He's a young guy, real sharp. He kind of rose through his ranks there. And he's an impressive guy. I've spoken to him a little bit as part of a group, but he's a young dude.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my gosh, like Doogie Howser over here, our guy.
But apparently extremely bright and very active, despite the fact that there has not been much said publicly. For people we've talked to around the conference, I think, it's pretty clear that Clemson has been rattling cages and looking for their possible options as well. By
the way, Bubba Cunningham's off the team.
You're done with him?
I'm done with him, man. There's no spot on this boat. Oh, man, you just have fun playing your basketball game. Love basketball, but didn't need that. Didn't need that sort of contribution to the discussion there. Bubba. Did
you read Andrea Adelson's story about it?
No.
Yesterday. No. Andrea had a story about it yesterday, quoting unnamed league sources, I think, saying that basically the other schools kind of put him up to that. They were like, all the other ADs, not including Michael Alford, had some conversations, and they're like, somebody going to say something? And so Bubba's like, all right, I'll say it. And they needed somebody to kind of give a vote of confidence to the conference. So again, man, whatever. I don't think any of that matters. I think if North Carolina's been having conversations too. They can act like, Florida State's the rogue renegade program. They've all been looking for options. And it's the same thing what just happened in the Pac-12. I mean, everybody's got to look out for themselves. They'd be doing their constituents a disservice if they didn't look out for themselves.
Let's keep it on the realignment talk. We got some questions about the football practice, but feel free to add more to the discussion. We'll pop them up on the screen here. Wesley Dobbs says, has Oregon and Washington taking a serious haircut to join the Big Ten going to have an impact on the potential bid for Florida State? because they're not going to get a full share of the Big Ten money here. So will that affect at all the candidacy of Florida State? Maybe what Florida State could ask for on the open market, you think, Ira?
As long as it's not a $30 or $40 million haircut, then I think Florida State would, that's the reality is Florida State's just trying to do whatever they can over these next 12 or 13 years to kind of not be as far behind as they will be if they just stay in the ACC. So it may not be ideal, whatever they end up with. And I think Peter Collins in the video we did with him a week ago, and then also during the Board of Trustees meeting last week, if you listen to what they're saying, they're acknowledging that there's probably not going to be a painless solution. It's not like Florida State is going to get into another conference anytime soon and make just as much money as these other schools are making. But maybe it'll be a lot closer, and then maybe it'll get them to where they need to be a lot sooner than just by staying pat. So, that's it's fair to think about and to expect, but I think they know that going in.
Let's pivot to actual football stuff happening on the field. Jim McLeod, in your opinion, Ira, who will have a bigger impact this season, Destin Hill or Winston Wright?
I want your opinion too, buddy. But that's a tough one. 2 or 3 months ago, I probably would have said Destin Hill because I was hearing really good stuff when he got to campus, how impressive he was in workouts. And I still just wasn't sure if Winston Wright, you hope it's going to come back, but we just didn't know. I thought he's looked really good. I know you and Corey have talked about it on Wake Up as well. I think Winston Wright's looked good. I mean, he's a 5th-year senior, 6-year senior, something like that. Very veteran guy. Looks like he's fully healthy and more explosive. I could see maybe Destin Hill emerging as the year goes on, but I like what I've seen from Winston Wright, and I think that veteran leadership might get him on the field a lot more, at least in the first half of the season, and then kind of see how things play out. What about you?
On your ballot, Ira had Destin Hill 34th on his preseason top 40. He had Winston Wright 33rd.
You and I, but if it wasn't for the health concerns, I would have Winston much higher. But you and I, were we the only ones that had Destin in our top 40s?
I think so.
Because he didn't make the top 40, but I think you and I were the only ones that had him in there.
I left Winston off of my ballot because I just thought what we'd seen in the spring, or the lack of what we'd seen in the spring, might be something that just was going to be the status quo for him. But if I had to revote, Kevin Noles would be the first guy. I'd be like, oops, I messed up on this one because I left Noles off my ballot because of apparently what he said on the. I heard it third person. I didn't actually watch Micah Pittman's vlog, but apparently on his vlog, he said I'm going to be out halfway through the season. So I'm like, all right, well then that means 6-7 games we don't get him, so I'm not going to put him on my top 40. But Kevin Noles out there playing football and doing well. But Winston Wright to me has been a very encouraging development. I wasn't expecting that. Maybe it's expectations, and that's why I'm feeling the way I am. But he's looked quite well these first 2 days that they've been in shells. So I will probably edge him just ahead of Destin this season because of that sort of experience that he has. But man, when it's all said and done, they're not going to get nearly as much out of Winston Wright as they'll get out of Destin Hill in the years to come. But I think Destin Hill's name will ring out louder and for longer in Florida State circles than Winston Wright. But for this season, I'll take Winston Wright.
And it'll be really 2 stories for Florida State fans to root for. Destin Hill, of course, had to sit out 2 years, is finally getting to play. Winston Wright, his career was in jeopardy. When he got in that car accident 18 months ago or so, he didn't know if he'd be able to play football again. If he has that, success, you're just happy for him and his family. And I actually met his dad in the spring. Super nice guy. Winston seems like a super nice guy. You're definitely rooting for those 2 guys to, kind of find their roles in that sea of Amazons that Florida State has at wide receiver.
Yeah, right on. Maybe he classifies as Amazonian. Darion Williamson, shout out to our guy. Dropping $20 in the jar.
Thanks, man.
Hey, Aslan and Ira. Do we finally see Darion Williamson take a big step? He put big in all caps, everybody. I don't know if you should have put a 1 instead of the I in the big. Give a little shot to the Big Ten out there. If he were to stay healthy this year, it seems like he could have something to say about the slot. Can't forget what he did to Boston College last year with minimal snaps.
Yeah, man, you answered your own question, I think, with the second sentence. If he stays healthy. If he stays healthy, there's no doubt. I think Darion Williamson, I think, is is as impressive physically as almost anybody else they have out there at that position. He looks, I mean, he can fly, very fluid. It's good hands, like you said. What we saw in the BC game last year was impressive. 5 catches in just like a minute, it seemed like, and has all the talent in the world. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and now we've seen him out there practice, and hopefully that stays the case. Maybe sometimes injuries are weird, man. There are times where a guy will, be injured. Remember when Landon Dickerson left for Alabama? A lot of people were doing, and I was probably one of them, like, oh, well, he can't stay healthy anyway. And then he goes and becomes an All-American first-round draft pick. Like sometimes guys have injuries and then they get past them and it never happens again. And then other guys stay injured their whole careers. And, hopefully Darion's not one of those. And because he definitely has talent. If he stays healthy, I don't have any doubt. I think he's in that top 5 or 6 guys for sure, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know about slot though. I don't know if
Right.
he'd find a home in the slot. I think he still would be out wide, but maybe he, after Johnny catches a 64-yard pass and needs a blow, maybe Darion comes in to poach the touchdown from the college fantasy football players. But
and they Norvell's just got to figure out a way to get, I don't know, 14 or 15 or 16 guys on the field all at the same time, because there's going to be some tough choices, man. I don't know. I'm still fascinated to see what he does formation wise, and because personnel, because there's so many guys that can hurt you a lot of different ways on that offense.
I don't know, we haven't even spoke about Hakeem Williams really all that much through like 4 days of camp, and he's a guy that's made some plays out there, and he might not be, going up against prime scholarship players, but he's a guy that we've kind of forgotten about. And somebody in the comments section was mentioning like what's happened to Kentron Portier. You guys were talking about him all the time, and we don't hear a lot about him either. And it's like, yeah, because they are loaded. I mean, go listen to Johnny Wilson's interview. He's like, I've never been on a team this stacked before.
Yeah, Vandrevius, before it's all said and done, Vandrevius is going to be a factor. I mean, there's just a lot of really talented receivers and tight ends and backs.
The James B. Do I have your permission? Can I hit the air horn just once, Ira?
Have at it, buddy.
Thank you, man. $100 in the jar from James B. out there in Pensacola. James B., thank you, man.
Thanks, James B. Always appreciate you, man.
Hello, fellas. Which, by the way, James B., come out to Panama City on Saturday. Corey Clark, Michael Lanks, and myself will be talking to the Panama City Seminole Club. Come hang out. Any of you that are in the Panhandle, come hang out. Hello, fellas. I was asked to ask you guys this question. So do you seriously think that our actions in trying to leave the ACC will affect officiating this year?
I'll just tell you this. I mean, look, man, even athletic department officials are human beings. And, I've had some people in the athletics department and former athletics department officials and that have expressed, kind of half jokingly, but half also like, yeah, man, probably not going to get a great whistle in the conference, especially if they announce they're leaving. Now, I don't know. I haven't watched closely to see what happened with Texas and Oklahoma last year. I don't know if you did, Aslan, but that's going to be the concern. Anytime there is a call that goes against Florida State after what's been going on, people are going to be wondering that. Whether or not it's legitimately an issue, I don't know.
Somebody floated out there that the reason Dabo hasn't said anything is because he doesn't want to pollute his season by having, maybe unfavorable referee decisions go against him by being vocal and outspoken. So I don't know.
It's impossible for us to gauge. I will tell you though, like I said, it's not out of the realm to be concerned about it, because I do know people of significance who were part of the whole process who have expressed concerns about it off the record. So it's probably something to watch.
Z Chan's in the house. One more time, Ira, please.
Sure.
Thanks, man. I don't want to sully your brand here, man. With
we're good.
Sound effects and B quality antic. Our guy, Dr. Zach. Evening, gentlemen. Glad to spend my birthday evening with y'all. Hey, man. Leo season. Welcome.
Happy birthday, Zach.
Yeah. Passing touchdown versus rushing touchdowns against LSU, and what number of points scored do you think would guarantee a win? 90.
That would guarantee it. You're right.
Yeah. Passing touchdowns. I'll go with 3 in the air, 2 on the ground. I think 30, that would be 35. I think 35 guarantees you a win. It's week
good.
1. It's week
man,
1.
it's solid. I like it. I'll just to be contrarian, I'll say 2 passing, and I'll say 3 rushing. Yeah, I mean, but I think they may score 38. They might score 41. I like Florida State to be around 40 points in that game. As good as LSU's defense is, I just think this offense is gonna put up a lot of points. It's interesting though. I was talking to somebody the other day, around the program, just about that game and that matchup, and there's a couple of X factors for LSU too, because Perkins wasn't a factor last year. They'll also get the decent defensive lineman back now.
Smith,
yeah. So there's it's going to be a challenge, man. There's no question. But if I was LSU, I would not be looking forward to facing this Florida State offense. I mean, it's only 4 days, and I know Mike Norvell is kind of trying to tell us to slow our roll a little bit, but I was excited about this offense all along, even more so when they got Keon Coleman. But even after these first 4 days, I feel better about it than I even did before. I don't know what you think, Aslan. I mean, it's when you see it all there, it's impressive.
I don't know how you defend it for 60 minutes. I just don't know. I mean, I felt that way, like even watching them in the spring with the way Jordan was operating. That's before they got Keon. Just thinking about Jaheim and Johnny and Trey, and thought Kentron would be good enough, and we saw how Van Dravius looked, and then you drop Keon Coleman into the mix. Corey said this on a show the other day about it'd be really nice to have Duquesne again. I sure would feel good about it. It wouldn't hurt, man, but I don't need it. They don't need a tune-up. Like I know it's week 1, but I'm with you. I just feel like 35 to me is like the floor. I don't want to say be shocked. I'd be disappointed if they didn't score in the 30s, even in week 1 against. I know LSU is going to be a really very game opponent. Matt House has got NFL background. I think he's coaching a Super Bowl when he was with the Chiefs too. So, he gave Florida State some fits there in the second half, but. Yeah, this is a different team. I mean, LSU is going to be different too than what we saw week 1 last year. I get it. That was their first game, all new coaching staff. But man, this Florida State team is just, this offense is incredible when you think about it. I mean, today alone, you saw Johnny catching balls down the field. You saw Keon. You saw Jaheim doing it. Like in the matter of 3 plays, like Corey, I think, did the math on it. Like within 3 plays, those 3 guys accounted for something like 140 yards. I know it's your own team in a practice situation, but it's incredible to think how they're going to look, because this quarterback too, right, Ira? Like Keon's still learning.
Yeah.
But man, Jordan's got such control, such genuine, real confidence. It's just hard to see them sputtering around for the better part of 60 minutes against any team.
Yeah, and the thing with Keon, and I mentioned in a piece I wrote on the site earlier today about the newcomers, the guys that we've seen for the first time this summer. What's really blown me away about him, something Jordan Travis made a comment during the summer when we interviewed Jordan and Trey during the summer, and he said, or it might have been when you interviewed him over in Louisiana, either one, he said, he was very impressed by the way Keon learned so quickly, the fact he can play multiple receiver positions already. He's just worked so hard to really learn the offense. And I don't know, man, like I don't know what I expected Keon Coleman to be, but I just figured great athlete, productive player, coming in for his 1 year before he goes to the NFL. I don't know. I just didn't expect him to be like a team guy and like really focused on learning and communicating and helping other players and all that stuff. And that's been so cool. I mean, he is. And so we're seeing that in practices, the way he, after every route, you'll see him stop and talk to Ron Dugans or stop and talk to another receiver or talk to the DBs about what they're doing. Like he's a student of the game. And so you not only added like a really talented receiver, but you added another veteran presence to a room that already has a lot of veterans and an offense that already has a lot of veterans. And like when you talk about this offense right now, it's you want to check yourself because you sound like just a homerish fan, but man, there's just so much to like about it.
Yeah. And this doesn't make sense to me. Like I can't believe. Like, I don't know, for some reason in my demented head, I just feel like you have to have some bad dudes on your team. Like not bad to society, but just like, some bad guys on your team. I think like
some edge, a little bit of edge.
Even a little bit more than that. I think Herm Edwards said, like, I can deal with like 2 of those guys. I can't have 3 of them on my team, but you give me 2 like bad dudes, but they can play football. I'll figure out a way to make them work and stay in line, but I can't have more than 2. but they seemingly like guy on top of guy they keep bringing in here is like so excited to be here, play beside this guy, play underneath that coach, compete against that guy across the field from him. Like that's like the part where I pinch myself. Like, come on, like chill out. Like this is not a Disney story. But like they're really just a good feeling around this team, covering them and hearing them and seeing them joke with each other, walking off the field after practice. Like they're not faking that stuff for us. We're not turning the cameras on them. We're filming their teammates, but they're just trying to like make their teammates laugh and smile and cut up. And, Norvell's like poking fun at them as they're walking by. And it's incredible what they've created, building it his way, which I didn't want to give him the time to do it maybe. But he's put together and it's been impressive so far. I can't wait to see how it looks.
I think the way I'd equate it though, it's like we all see Nick Saban on game days, and he's a maniac, but you see him in those settings with the recruits, and you can see why he's such a good recruiter. And you see him sometimes off guard with assistant coaches, or you hear stories from assistant coaches, and he's got that different personality. So I think there's some of that. Like Fabian Lovett seems like a real likable guy. We've seen him on the field where he doesn't seem very likable. Jared Verse, clearly, as much as we enjoy talking to him, clearly is not that guy on the field. So, I mean, I think those, you've got some guys who have the ability to turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah, but they're like gregarious and very sincere. Like when they talk, I mean, like, I'm talking about like guys who are just like, yeah, whatever, man. Just like I don't want to. Guys like Jalen Ramsey, they're just like, yeah, they look down on like, right, like, hey, you don't know anything about the game. I don't want to talk to you. I just want to play and show how awesome I am and do my thing. Which I love you, Jalen. I do, I really do. But like, I think you need like guys like that, just chip on their shoulder, just like angry at the world kind of guys. That these guys are all like, yeah, man, I'm just glad to be at Florida State playing with this guy beside me. It's incredible. I really do love you, Jalen. Wesley Todd, our guy on the Villages. So far through 4 practices, who has surprised you guys the most that you did not expect much out of? Kevin Noles is my guy because I just didn't think he was going to be there, period. But that might be a little bit of a cop-out. Otherwise, I would probably say Winston Wright. Again, I just think the last 2 days I've kind of kept a little bit of an eye on him in certain situations. And like he does look like he is healthy and has figured that out and can let himself believe that and play that way. So that'd be my pick right now.
Yeah, Winston's a good answer. I mentioned it earlier on Jeff Cameron's show from 1 to 3 p.m. locally in Tallahassee and on Warchant TV, wildly popular. He has a similar question, and I think it fits here. Not that I didn't expect much out of, but he's more than I was expecting. I was probably the one kind of wait and see guy with Braden Fisk. I know a lot of the staff were all in just seeing him run around in the spring. I wanted to see what he looked like with pads on, hitting guys, colliding. And I feel like I've seen enough, Aslan. I feel like Braden Fisk is going to be a real nice player. I liked that he knows what he is. Like he talked today about, I asked him if he's ever seen Odell Hagen's highlights. And he said, yeah, he goes, he's told us he was a high motor guy, relentless energy, in which Odell was. And he's like, that's kind of how I see myself. Even if the play's not near me, I'm going to go chase it down. Sometimes, I don't know, man, defensive line tackle stats can be deceiving because if a guy, if he's not blowing up the play, but he's just making the tackle 4 yards downfield, how important really was it? But I think that motor from a guy like that is impressive. And he looks like a guy that can make plays in the backfield. So, I mean, he had 12 tackles for loss last year. So he's a guy that it's not that I didn't expect a lot from him, but he's much more probably than what I expected because I don't know, Western Michigan, I wanted to see it against better competition, but he looks the part even against this offensive line.
And imagine being like a 330-pound guard, like blocking him and the play's going away from you and you're trying to take a breather on this one and you see him like chasing the play and then he's running back and you're like, man, like what? Like this guy's coming back for more. It's like when Apollo's talking to his manager in Rocky 2 and he's like, he's all wrong for us, baby. He's like, see you beat a man like I've never seen you beat anyone before, and he kept on coming. I just feel like he's got that kind of edge to him, man. It's impressive, man. So, Evan Stewart wonders 45 total touchdowns for Jordan Travis. Over under. I'll take the under. That's a big number, man. I don't know if they'll run for as many touchdowns as we all think, but like if he throws for 39 and runs for 5, I mean that puts him at the under, and I think everybody listening to this would probably take that. I hope they would.
Now, if they play 15 games, Aslan.
True, though. That is true.
We'll see.
Well, they'll be up so big in the third quarter of all these games.
Right.
It's, he'll be handing off to Trey Benson when Johnny gets
Yeah,
one. So
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I just think there's so many weapons, and I think that they're going to be so good running the ball that I'd probably put it the under, but uh, I don't think anybody's going to be at the end of this year feel like disappointed that Jordan Travis wasn't super productive. I just think this isn't an offense where it's going to be all on his shoulders, not even close. So I think I would go the under also.
Cody Carnline throws $10 in the jar. Code. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cody.
What I noticed, Cody writes about Keon at his past school, which is Michigan State. You can say it, guys. You don't have to be like the players and the coach say my previous institution. What I noticed is that he attacked the ball in 50-50 situations. If you were a defensive coordinator, what would you do?
We saw it the other day, right? The catch he had against Fentrell. Was it against Fentrell? I think on Saturday, where they're running in stride, and he just elevated and went and got the ball, and then came down and finished a long play at the end of it. He's definitely got those ball skills. I mean, you can see. I think several of us have made the comment at practice where he looks like a basketball player from the standpoint of going up and getting rebounds, really good body control. And sometimes guys have that and don't have that. I remember Florida State had a power forward, center power forward in basketball about 10 years ago. I'm not going to say his name, but he was a guy, was 6'11", 7 feet, somewhere in that ballpark, and was athletic and could really jump, but just wouldn't go up and rebound. And I remember Corey asking Leonard Hamilton one day, he's like, why won't he just go snatch the ball? And Leonard Hamilton said, if he went up and snatched the ball, as athletic as he is, he wouldn't be at Florida State. And his point was, some people just have that, and some people, you can refine it, but some people have it, some people don't have it. I think Keon's got it. What can defensive coordinators do? That's the I think we just need to play that Jaheim Bell clip over and over from the other day where he's like, you can't double all of us. And so you got to figure it out. I mean, I'm sure people will try to be physical with him, but he's a big, strong kid. I don't know, man. I think like we've said, I'd love to be in some of these defensive coordinator meeting rooms, especially once they see this offense. I don't know. You can't look at Keon Coleman and say he's the answer, right? I mean, you got Johnny, you got Jaheim, you got Trey, you got Jordan.
And this is sacrilege. So I'm not comparing them at all to the 2007 Patriots. But what made the Patriots lose that Super Bowl when they were undefeated was two Hall of Fame, at least one for sure, Strahan, and then Osi Umenyiora on the other side, being able to get to Tom Brady so he never could be comfortable throwing the ball, right? The only way you beat Florida State is if you've got two world-class edge guys. You need to be able to get to Jordan Travis and harass him constantly every single time he drops back. Now, listen, Jordan's much more, physically gifted running with his legs than Tom Brady ever would be.
And he's been really good against the blitz too. So you'd have to do it with your front four.
Exactly. You have to be able to rush for, cover so well on the back end, but especially be able to rush for and get to him very, very fast, knock him off of his platform. Now that's easy to say. It's extremely difficult to have the talent to be able to pull that off again for 60 whole minutes against a guy that can scramble pretty well and doesn't seem to get frazzled anymore by it. In 2020, when he would get pressured early, he'd run around and maybe not see some things. He'd be debating with himself whether or not to keep looking down the field or tuck and run. Now he knows in pretty much every situation where to go with the ball. You have to hope that they get a drop or two. You got to have some good luck on your side, and that you're going to have to outscore them 38-35 to beat them. I know LSU had a stinker of a game when they had Joe Burrow against Auburn. They still won it. But yeah, I mean,
those can happen. Yeah, you can have a game where drop passes or just things go wrong or
penalties,
penalties, pressures you don't expect. It can happen. It's but to your point, the thing with Jordan is, we know the athletic ability. We saw how far he came as a passer, but I think the thing that's really hit me more and more throughout the spring and then in preseason so far is to what you were saying. He knows, it's he's a coach now on the field. He knows exactly where everything is. He knows where his release safety valves are. He knows where the pressures, could be coming from. He just seems so confident and calm back there that, it's even if things aren't breaking down, it seems like he would know the answers.
He's another guy that's constantly talking to Keon. Like when Keon's done running a rep, like he's communicating to him, telling him, hey, this is what we like to do instead around here. So, like he knows how this offense operates, and he knows how to operate it properly. So it's extremely fun to think about how good they'll look. P. Simpson says the sage of Florida State sports is Ira Schoffel. I don't disagree. No one with half a brain disagrees. He wonders, Ira, which ACC team will you miss visiting the most?
That's a good one. Thanks, Preston. And sage just means I'm old, so I appreciate that. Syracuse might be there. One of my best friends is on the faculty at Syracuse, so I always enjoy that trip. The game experience, not so much. I think Boston College, from a, obviously Clemson's the big football environment. Personally, the Boston College trip, my sister lives there. I love Boston. That will be the interesting thing when they do change conferences, and I'll say when, just because I'm not saying it's going to happen right away, but Florida State's not going to be in the ACC long term. I don't think there's any way that's going to happen, whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 6 years from now. But there were some cool cities in the ACC, at least. Boston's a cool city, Pitt's a cool city, Miami's my hometown. There were some, I like some of the cities along the ACC, but I'm really looking forward to playing in real college football environments, which we only get a couple of them in the ACC.
Yeah.
How about you? You don't go to all the road games, but any of them stand out to you?
I'll miss ACC kickoff. They feed us well. Feed us well. I'm easily my loyalty is easily purchased. SEC media days, they just give you like a box lunch. ACC kickoff has like a pretty high caliber buffet. I mean, it wasn't quite spring meetings at Amelia Island. That chimichurri steak is still on my mind, Ira. It was so good. It was so good. But Charlotte has always been a fun time, especially with that cool Airbnb we had this past one. So
yeah,
I'll miss that a little bit. Don't miss us. We'll be back. 15-second break.
Contact Russ Boris for an auto quote today.
That's right. Do it. Holler at Russ, y'all. We kind of talked about this, but I just want to pop it up on the screen. David William Langley. I'm not convinced of the power of FSU early. A lot of these guys have not played with Jordan Travis. I guess it's fair. I mean, Keon, team are new guys, but man, guys, really good people are able to plug and play. Like Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams didn't play a lot together. They figured it out pretty quickly in Los Angeles last year. I fully expect Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell to be fully deployed, fully able and capable once Orlando September 3rd rolls around.
Yeah, I think a couple points I'd make, and I'm just like thinking the frame of reference. Like a couple years ago when they brought in Andrew Parchment from Kansas, and it did seem like it took him a little while to kind of get in the flow, and he didn't seem to know the offense all that well, early in camp or as camp went on. But the difference here is, I would say, one is you've got you've got a much better overall team environment and culture right now. That was, a couple of years in. Now you're 4 years in. So now when guys come into the program, they're getting assimilated a lot faster during the summer. Now they're able to do a lot more work. Mike Norvell talked about the last, I think you asked him about it a couple of days ago. They're able to do so much more now during summer practices. So, those guys, they don't look like they just got here. So I understand why you would say that, but this has been different than anything I've seen before. Like these guys look like Jaheim was here in the spring. Some of these guys have been here for a longer time, but even the guys that came in the summer, man, they look like, especially the veteran players, look like they've been here for a long time. I think it's going to come together pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Anthony Galloway. Hey guys, great job as always. How have special teams looked? Any emphasis on it? Got a feeling that special teams is going to play a big role in the LSU game.
Kickers look pretty good, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Fitzpatrick and Keltner have both looked good. Maybe combined, maybe each missed maybe one field goal, I think, that we've seen about. Both been really solid and kicking it well. Like even they're, not just making their kicks, but they seem to be kicking with authority and getting a lot of distance on them. So they've looked good. I mean, everything we've seen so far, Um, Alex Mastromano is now his 4th year now as the punter, so I think you know what you got there. The return game, there's some questions because you lost Micah Pittman. They're trying out a bunch of different guys on punt returns. Destin Hill, Keon Coleman, Lawrence Toafili, a few other guys are getting looks at punt returns. They got a bunch of guys taking turns at kickoff returns. One thing that's been interesting to me about the special teams, just watching some of what they do, and they always put a big emphasis on it, Anthony. It's one of Mike Norvell's big things he focuses on. They do several periods a day of special teams work. Is a lot of these freshman defensive backs, if you look, the one thing that's changed dramatically in college football from 20 or 30 years ago till now is it used to be like backups played on special teams and maybe freshmen, a lot of backups, not your best players. But, I think when Jimbo got here, they really went hard and heavy, and you'd see Telvin Smith out there and LaMarcus Joyner out there. And I mean, all the studs were on, all the studs were out there on kickoff coverage and punt returns and punt coverage. Well, Mike Norvell's one of those as well. So they've had a lot of those guys out there. But I have a feeling some of these talented young DBs are going to get out there. I mean, I think you're, Conrad Hussey and Edwin Joseph and some of these KJ Kirkland and Quindarius Jones. And I mean, I know you're carrying the banner for Quindarius, but he's a good banner to carry. He's impressive. But don't you think those guys are going to see a lot of time on special teams? Because they're every bit the athlete than these older guys are. You're not getting a drop off from athletically from most of the starters to those guys.
Yeah, man, they incorporate so many guys, though. Like DJ Lundy's out there making plays when it comes to special teams, but it feels like that's like a natural progression for those guys to get them involved early because they do have such high upside in the short term. Because we see them making plays in 11-on-11, on 7-on-7. These 3-star guys that might not have been that highly touted, but they seem to be, again, man, their evaluations, the fits. It's exciting to think about. I keep saying that. I need to stop saying exciting, but it's encouraging to know that they've hit on these guys pretty quickly, it seems like. And the defensive backs, when it comes to the freshmen, they've been the first ones to really kind of make an impact. Because your linebackers probably, I think like DJ Lundy might be ahead of Blake Nicholson or Dylan Brown Turner in terms of being like a special teams contributor. It feels like, because to your point, Ira, like they're not putting guys they can't trust out there on special teams anymore. Everyone's putting the cream of their crop they have out there. So,
real quick story. I don't know if I've ever told you this story. I may have, but there's probably somebody watching this I haven't told the story to before.
You know how many hours we've spent alone in a car, Ira?
A lot. So I probably told you the story.
But it's fine. I love your stories. I'll hear it again.
So when Leon Washington was here, and he was obviously a great punt returner, I asked him if he had ever seen T-Buck's return, the fake return, like full up from Pascagoula, and he had never seen it before. I think he maybe had heard about it. Yeah. So we went up. It wasn't the fake against Clemson. It was the one where he pretended like he was going to fair catch it.
Sorry, I'm talked out of school. My bad. I love it.
No problem.
Carry on.
T-Buck did the fair catch against Syracuse, and then he took off and ran it back. And so I took Leon, actually the film staff let me and Leon go up and watch it up there. They had the old footage. And the first thing Leon, like we watched the play and I was like, man, how cool was that? And Leon goes, they didn't have any athletes on special teams back then, did they? Because when you watch it, it really was a bunch of just like, it looked like a bunch of tight ends trying to run down Terrell Buckley, and it didn't go real well for him. So it was pretty funny to hear him say how much the game has changed. And that was 20 years ago. So imagine, how much it is now. I mean, the reason there's not a lot of punt returns and kick returns for touchdowns is because everybody's putting their best players out there now.
Yeah. And those Australian kickers.
Yeah, that has a big
rules
part.
Kickers too, also doing a lot of stuff. Let's do some myth busting or clarifying some misconceptions really quickly here, Ira, possibly. Robbie Meyer says, if other teams join the ACC, will that reopen the grant of rights for teams to leave?
I haven't gotten total clarity on that. I don't think adding one or two would do it. And again, like the schools that don't want the conference to fall apart wouldn't agree to add one or two just random schools if that was in jeopardy. So I haven't heard anything definitively on that. I think the bigger focus has been on if 8 teams leave, it sounds like that would be enough to make the conference fall apart.
Benjamin Tuchert.
Same question.
What happens to the TV deal when the new teams join? Are the existing schools all taking a smaller portion until later in their contracts due to the new schools?
Well, and that's what you talked about earlier with the schools joining the Big Ten. Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten. They're actually taking smaller cuts than the existing members, and that's happened in the past with different teams. And usually, maybe what the conference sometimes will do is they'll give them a loan to kind of make them whole for 6 years or 10 years, whatever it is, until they become a full-time member, and they're paying it back. But so there's ways around it. But yeah, usually they don't get as much as everybody else when they first come in. I'm not sure. I haven't read enough about Texas and Oklahoma. They, because of who they are, maybe they're getting full loads when they get in.
Pretty darn sure they are.
Yeah, to get them. But for most schools, a lot of times they do get a smaller cut when they come in.
Let's see. Here's a good question. I was going to pop up on the screen. Did I hit the little blue button to star it? I did not. I'm going to have to scroll through and find it here real quick, Ira. But this whole thing about Cal and Stanford happening in the next 24 hours, everybody, that's not like a Hail Mary to get us out. That's more or less the ACC trying to cover themselves. So try not to get too excited about the one or two teams joining and things changing. Octavio Cedeno says, which backup quarterback looks to be the one to carry the torch next year? Well, I'll tell you who's not going to be the guy. I'm just kidding.
I still think Tate's the guy right now, but Brock Glenn's impressive. AJ's had moments here or there, but I think if you think of like how much time they've been in the system, I think you're more impressed right now. I'm more impressed right now based on what we see, what Brock Glenn's able to do based on his amount of time in the system versus AJ Duffy and his amount of time. So I do think, right now, if I was handicapping it, I would say Brock Glenn may have the best chance a year from now beating out Tate Rodemaker. But I think Tate will have a chance to do it as well. And then Luke Kromenhoek's going to be here. And I wouldn't count him out, man. There are freshman quarterbacks that play now. And he is so impressive, not just as a thrower of the football, but just as a human being. He's got kind of that it factor. So I think it's going to be a wide open competition. I think AJ's got the athletic ability. We saw him break off a big run today. Corey wrote about it in his observations. But, you'd like to – I'm waiting for more from AJ as a passer that I don't think we've seen yet.
I'm reading a story from Ross Dellinger from February, back when he was still with Sports Illustrated. It said Texas and Oklahoma are expected to receive a share of distribution from the ESPN TV deal in 2024, but the amount is uncertain. They are unlikely to receive the full amount.
So even them,
yeah.
So if even Texas and Oklahoma aren't getting the full amount, then obviously, but yeah, they usually make them whole by giving them a loan or something along those lines. But it's just part of it. You just still want to be there. So if Florida State gets into the Big Ten or the SEC, this is what's going to happen to them too. They're not going to get the full share right off the bat.
Michael Mobley, why aren't Louisville, Pittsburgh, and Virginia Tech more supportive of trying to change the status of the ACC or moving those schools will have places to land?
Virginia Tech is, they were one of the 7, the schools that we're talking in the spring. Virginia Tech and Virginia are kind of locked at, we think they're pretty much locked together. North Carolina and NC State are pretty much locked together from everything we hear. Then you get Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. I think the question with Louisville and Pittsburgh is, figuring out how desirable they are. North Carolina is extremely desirable. Virginia is extremely desirable. If you look at the Big Ten historically, those are the kind of schools they have, these big flagship, old land-grant universities with huge enrollments. That's kind of what the Big Ten's always gone after. There's a lot of talk that the SEC is interested in North Carolina because they'd love to get in that state from a TV perspective. I think with Pittsburgh and Louisville, I think they don't – if they go to the Big 12, I don't think there's any perception that they're going to get a lot more money than they're getting in the ACC. And I don't really know who else makes sense for them other than the Big 12. I really haven't heard them be considered as a factor in the SEC or the Big 10. So if that's the case, then they're not a school. If you're Florida State, I don't know if Peter Collins and Michael Alford are making a lot of calls to Louisville and Pittsburgh to join the team because there's probably not as enticing a sell as maybe those other schools have.
Yeah, it's all about TV markets, and everything's times a flat circle, right? It's coming back to TV markets. Like maybe the SEC would want to be in the Pennsylvania footprint, but I doubt it. I think they'd rather double up in South Carolina and in the state of Florida here.
We'll see, though. I mean, look, I mean, it's and this gets back to that whole conversation we had earlier about like who knows whether to believe the truth. I mean, some of the most respected people you listen to in the college football space, you know, if you listen to we've mentioned it before, the College Football Inquirer podcast, which you know has Ross Dellinger and Pat Forty and Dan Wetzel. Those are as connected as it gets, and they continue to say they get the impression the SEC is not looking to expand. Well, so, okay, one of two things that either has to be the case. If for Florida State to get there, either they have to be wrong, which is possible, or the Big Ten, the threat of the Big Ten, and becomes too real. And maybe at that point, the SEC doesn't want to let Florida State go there. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But, right now, like we're all hot. Everybody, Florida State fans are hot and bothered about where they're going to go and what's possible. Some of the people that cover this industry still say that, the SEC is not looking to expand. I have a hard time believing that if the Big Ten just keeps growing. But, that's what they're putting out there.
I wonder if their, choice of operation is to be much more quiet than the Big Ten has been.
Right.
The Big Ten hasn't been very shy about leaking stuff out to sources. I feel like the SEC is pretty top heavy. I think Greg Sankey runs a much tighter ship than what's coming out of Indianapolis and the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't think anybody thought they were in expansion mode when they went and got Texas and Oklahoma either, right?
Yeah. I mean, staying at 16 would have made sense. Like if both were going to stay at 16, because you're at 32 and you have your complete NFL symmetrical model. But then when the Big Ten goes 18, why not go to 18? Especially when there could be a Florida State, a Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, Florida State, Miami out there. Like that would make sense. If you're the SEC, like maybe you don't say it publicly because Florida State's not available, quote unquote. But like once they are, then that would make sense. Yeah, I mean, it made sense for the Big Ten to get to get Washington and Oregon. It would make sense for the SEC to go to 18 by adding Florida State and Clemson. Some information behind the lines. Tomcat says, have you guys watched any of the Miami practice reporters? They literally give a player-by-player injury report after practice. I think you guys would be in big trouble. Is Mario letting them watch the entire day too?
I don't believe so. I think they get a little bit of access, and that's the trade-off. I mean, for people that haven't been paying close attention since Mike Norvell's been here, he's the most successful coach at Florida State in decades. Bobby Bowden, even the last, 10, 15 years, didn't really allow much access, even in preseason practice. Coach Bowden used to allow the media in for pretty much all of camp, and then would shut it down around game week. When Jimbo got here as an assistant, that pretty much stopped, and it's stopped ever since. So Mike Norvell lets us watch all practice, but he doesn't. The one request he makes, or demand, I guess, is that we don't report injury information unless he discusses it. Unless we ask him about it, he'll confirm it, then we can report it. But if they're not giving you access to practice, then you can write whatever you want. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Is we believe the trade-off is good enough to deal with his policies, because we get so much access to practice that a lot of schools don't get.
Well said. All right, that about wraps us up here on the Monday Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Vorhis. Check him out at russvorhis.com. You know how to spell Russ. Vorhis, VORHIS.com. Got two offices here in Florida, Jacksonville Beach and Orange Park. But again, full coverage in the state of Florida as well as Alabama and Georgia. So holler at Russ, big-time Florida State fan, supporter, alum, doing a lot of great things for the Florida State community. We're going to have busy days, weeks ahead here, Ira. We'll be in Jacksonville, maybe hanging out with Russ here in a few days, Corey and myself. But what should folks expect out of Warchant.com tomorrow as we head to practice number 5 on the preseason?
Yeah, and if people haven't checked out the site yet today, we have a lot of coverage from practice. Corey and Tom Lang had their observations from practice. I also put up a story about Braden Fisk. Corey's got a story coming about Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, who spoke to the media today. Really insightful guys, and clearly are going to be a big part of this offense. So that story will be coming up on the site probably in the morning. Michael and Matt are covering recruiting stuff, so there's plenty going on there as well. And then, as you said, tomorrow, you guys are going to have a wake up in the morning?
Absolutely.
All right, wake up in the morning.
5 days a week now, man. It's football season now.
That's what I like to hear. And then Seminole headlines coming at 1 o'clock, 1 to 3 tomorrow too. So, man, there's no reason to stop. Just keep coming back to Warchant.com and Warchant TV. Thanks to everybody who watched tonight. This was enjoyed it. Great questions.
Absolutely. Thanks for all your questions. Thanks to the James B, Z-Chan, happy birthday, by the way, and Cody for throwing some tips in the jar too. But we appreciate you all being here, hanging out, asking questions. Hit the thumbs up on the way out if you could, and subscribe to our YouTube page. And take advantage, a day and a half or so left as you're maybe listening to the replay on this. But just know we're running a really solid promo out there. We want you to be members. It's only $1 for a month, 25% off an annual subscription. The deal ends Wednesday, and we mean it. Hard red line. Don't cross it. Come join all of us. It'll be fun. For Ira, I'm Aslan. Thanks for watching the Monday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhis.